My crew is all fired up. Y'all better just wise up. Everybody getting sized up. Before we all rise up, start running your times up. Cause when my crew ride up, the sky gon' light up. Everybody get fired up.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Fired Up Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Reba, and we're excited to have a guest in the studio today, Keith Parrish. So let's talk a little bit about the format here. Fired Up is a podcast where we're going to learn from entrepreneurs, day in the life, real stories, and that's what we do at Reignite. Reignite is about ignite your journey and fuel your fire, and this is a program for entrepreneurs trying to grow their business and scale and go through all of the breakpoints that typically challenge us as business leaders. And so we want to learn from the experiences of real business owners that are living this every day and figure out, what worked and what didn't and what we can learn from and apply. So I'm really excited to talk to you, Keith. You and I have worked together on some different projects, and I think have a good history together, and I just really watched your business thrive and grow, and really interested to sit down and talk about your story. So I'm excited we have you here today. For those who don't know him, Keith Parrish is the owner of Parrish Digital Video Productions and this wonderful Studio Me. And Keith has been a video production expert, a storyteller. He is a dedicated entrepreneur and husband and father to three. So I think really a great person to speak to and talk about the journey of entrepreneurial life. And so I if I missed anything, let me know. But I think the point is to kind of get to know you and your business and your story.
And that was great. And I really appreciate being on this podcast. I also appreciate you were one of the early supporters of Studio Me. You always came to our networking events and referred us to people. And because of people like you, we made it through the early years. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. It's great. I love to see every time I come in here, I feel like you guys have something new and innovative and just a new tool for creators to use. And I want to get into that, but take us back to the beginning, because you've had a very successful production career. Parrish Digital's done, I've seen some really high quality campaigns for some really well-known brands. And so you've already had some success in that era. What started the idea, or why is Studio Me something that's important to you?
Yeah. I mean, this goes back to 2015. So we're in our 7th year, which is crazy to think about. But yeah, so back in 2015, the landscape was a little different, and sometimes it's hard to remember kind of how things were then. But there was traditional media, which is, large crews, large productions. That was sort of phasing out to these smaller productions, which smaller crews, equipment was just getting more efficient and easier to use. And also because of phones, people were doing it themselves a lot. And I saw this shift happening, but things hadn't really caught up to speed yet at that time. And I don't know, I've always been somebody who just likes things to be very efficient, and I felt like there was a lot of waste in a lot of these productions. We'd have clients that would call us and like, hey, can you do an interview with just one of our CEO or something? And so we'd pack all our stuff up into the van, drive to location, set it all up. And then when you deal with like phones ringing, people walking in the hallways, like all these other issues, fixing the light. And so it'd be like a 4-hour process to get a 10-minute interview, and they'd be paying that whole time for that. And I was like, if this was already set up, if there's a place that we could go, like I would pay for that, and I'm sure other people would pay for that too. So in a way, it was scratching our own itch. So that idea was kind of like on the back burner for a while I had my production company. Never really thought too much of it, but around this time, Joe, my co-founder, and I became really good friends. We thought we had like very similar mindsets, and at that time, like I had just gotten married. We were in our early 30s. Joe unfortunately lost his father a year prior, and we just wanted to both sort of like build something bigger than ourselves. And my other production company is called Parrish Digital Video. It has my last name Parrish in it, so I'm always very tied to that business. It's it's almost like a lifestyle business. And I wanted to try my hand at building something just that was an actual business where like we would just make the thing, it would live, and people would use it, and we would just kind of like watch it grow. And we both wanted that sort of thing, and we knew we'd be good business partners together. So before that, we looked at like all different other businesses. Like he was looking at a brewing company for a while, and we looked at storage units, just all different things, and nothing really like struck a chord with us. And then one day, we were just at the gym, and I was like, I wonder if I could talk Joe into this idea that I had about, a more efficient studio space. And, I was like, studio spaces haven't really evolved in 30 years, and like media is evolving a lot. Like, why not, instead of having a large open warehouse space to do productions, like break it up into smaller, more specialized spaces? And at first he was like, I don't know about that. And then by the end of the gym session, I finally had him like talked into it.
To wore him out.
Yeah. And we're like, all right, let's try this thing. And the other thing is we're like, there was another person that we're like, if we can convince this person that it's a good idea, then like, I think there's some legs to this. And so we talked to that person, and they loved the idea. So we're like, okay, maybe this has something there.
Yeah.
But we're still iterating 7 years later and trying to figure out like the perfect business model for it. And I mean, it's going. Obviously, we survived this long, so it's going just fine. But it's just something like we're always working on and building towards.
Yeah, I mean, you not only survived, you thrived through a lot of challenging times growing the business, and like you said, each of these rooms has a purpose, and I think that's something unique that I found about the studio versus sort of a general space, and it's all sort of stripped down and figure out how to use it. But you've got real design and intent around this, which I think is unique, and I think that's, in my mind, what's allowed you to scale in a time where other businesses are pulling back. Especially, you kept the studio going during COVID. I mean, you guys are still here, and that's hard to say for a site-based business. That's brick and mortar. There's a digital aspect to it, so I imagine you could do that. But that may be one of the challenges. But other ones, I'm interested to hear along the way. If you broke it down to sort of the one or two pivotal things that were really those roadblocks, those challenges to get to the next break point, do you have those in your mind? Are you still going through them? What's that like?
How much time do we have? Like there's been a lot, and the challenges now are a lot more fun. Like the early challenges were just surviving. Like when we opened this space, we sort of vastly under anticipated how much the startup cost would be, how much like the overhead was going to be. So the first year was scary because it was just about surviving. And it's the way I describe it is like, imagine going to your job every day and like working 60 hours a week and like not getting paid for it. But not only that, like you're losing money. Like that was what the first year felt like. And that's the only way I can describe it, is like 8 months of like, are we crazy? Like, what did we do here? Like what, like we're just like losing money. Luckily, like that was before I had kids. Joe was pretty level headed and was able to like walk me off the ledge a few times. But the first years were challenging, just in survival mode. Like the challenges were all, how do we pay our employees? How do we pay the overhead? And like little by little, we kind of dug our way out of that hole. And we, I think it was around August of the first year we were in business, we finally like started getting some bigger stuff in, and we're having more consistent users, and somehow ended up breaking even for the year, which was a miracle.
Okay.
That was a scary time, and those are the challenges we used to face, and still, I mean, that pain is still there. Like you still, if we have a slower month, it's still like, then you start getting back into that survival mode of like, okay, how do we generate some immediate revenue?
Yeah.
But now I get to take sort of a longer term approach to things and try to think, a couple months or years, ahead. And so my challenge now is really just like, how do I devote my limited time and resources to, like, do I focus today on customer service? Do I focus on which, I mean, we have studio managers, so they take care of a lot of the day-to-day stuff too. Yeah. I should say. It's like the early days we were kind of doing both, and now I don't have to worry about the day-to-day as much, but I still like have time that I want to devote to like improving customer service, improving the like sales process, how we get new customers in, improving the technology in the room.
Yeah.
And so there's all of these buckets to devote your time, energy, and resources to, and money to, but like choosing which route to go. And that's been the biggest challenge, is like, where do I put my time into? And
Sure.
like, what's the priority?
So trying to be more strategic about the investments you're making, or the direction that you're going with the studio versus sort of the day-to-day operations
Exactly.
piece, which you're still pretty involved in the studio, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I people always ask like, how do you split your time between the two companies? And I kind of just prioritize whichever one needs me the most at the moment.
Mhm.
And like I said, the studio kind of runs its day to day. And that was like, again, that was kind of our vision, was like to build this thing and just sort of like watch it grow.
Right.
And I feel like now, finally, 7 years later, we've kind of gotten to that point. We have a really great studio manager, Peter Regan, and a part-time manager, Maria, and they do an excellent job. And they're better than we are at, dealing with the customers that come through day to day. And they actually know more about what's happening than we do at this point. But we still want to be there to like see the next stage. So like our vision is, like our big vision is to, have a Studio Me kind of in every city,
That's great.
and and just potentially build out studio spaces inside of other companies. So like we have all these bigger plans that we're working towards. But yeah, it's just splitting the time is kind of just as needed.
Yeah,
I
and I
guess.
want to get into that sort of like what's next and how you're scaling. But you touched on something interesting. So talk about the team, because the team you've assembled really is what's allowed you to scale beyond yourself. Because before, like you said, you and your partners are sort of just doing everything, and it's just a matter of what fire is do I need to put out today. When you get some specialized team members that really have a talent, and you even said they do it better than I do, they can fill in the gaps, right? Where we have operational strengths and blind spots, we need people to sort of play off of those. And talk to me about, first of all, the team that you've selected, if there's some things that stand out, but also how did you know what you needed as you built that team?
Yeah, so that was something like when we started, we actually like we knew we would need a good studio manager, but we didn't anticipate like how good of a studio manager we would need. We're like, yeah, we're gonna just make the studio so efficient that it'll just run itself, and like, we'll just have, basically a person there that just pushes the buttons and that's it. And like,
Right.
but there's so much more to the role. Like, and Peter luckily is like has so many talents. Like he's a great filmmaker. He's really good with customers. He's good. He gives excellent tours. He's better speaking. Like he'd be better to sit here and talk than I am. But he's got just talents in so many different areas, and that's like what we needed. There's so many times where we had like when we first started, we had split the role up into 3 different managers, and we realized like that just doesn't work, because if somebody's working 2 days and then they don't work again until
Okay.
the next week, it's like they miss so much stuff, and like they just don't know what's happening in the studio. And that was like vastly more important than what we realized. And also just having somebody who's great with customers, makes them feel at ease, like all that stuff has been very important for us. And so we luckily now have studio managers where I don't worry about the studio. Like I used to kind of have to, like if a customer came in, I'd always be looking over the manager's shoulders and trying to see like if everything was okay. And now I don't have that, and it's a huge burden like off of my shoulders.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And that's so important to be able to fully delegate that over to somebody else. Do you have a process that you set up for them? Is it something where they're following what you would do, or did they develop that, or did it just kind of happen organically?
Apparently, if you just find this one high school in Pittsburgh that breeds these types of managers, because
Where is that?
it's called Eden, but it's 2 of our best studio managers and another freelance guy that I know. They all came from like that same high school, even though there are only like 25 people in their class, which is kind of crazy. But I'm saying that jokingly, but yeah, all of the good managers we had just came from referrals, and it just it takes some time to like figure out what you need in that role. What we pictured for that role when we started is vastly different. Actually, one of our original studio managers, he works now for Parish Digital, and he's like amazing in that role. The studio manager role like wasn't the right fit for him, but he's excellent in the role that he's in now. So like finding what people's strengths are and placing them in places where those strengths will like flourish. That's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems like it's definitely been a good match with the team that you've built for you. It'd be great if the studio could run itself. I mean, you've got AI in here, so
Yeah.
we should mention that as well, that it's really cool. You've been able to incorporate technology for things like switching and managing the flow of the production, but there's just some things you can't
Yeah.
have. They have to have a person that you trust and that is part of the business operation. And so it's great that you've got that. And so thinking about what's going well, I'm going to flip it for a little bit. And, is there's anything that you would do differently, and, think about what those might be along the way. Is there something, I don't know, that as you think about the journey that you've taken, if you had it to do again, would you do it differently? And if so, what would that be?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard question, because it's hard to say, if I were to do something differently, like what other new challenges would we have faced, or
Sure.
like, we really thought we knew what we were doing when we started, but we didn't. And so we had, like, the studio cost way more than we anticipated, because we had a contractor we consulted with who turned out to not know what he was doing, and he gave us one price, and then we just took his word for it, and then already signed the lease and already had things in motion, when we found out, like, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing, and these other contractors were like, it's actually 10 times, like literally 10 times.
10x what you thought it was going to be?
Yeah,
really?
what
Wow.
we thought it would be. So
Okay.
we ended up spending 10 times more than we anticipated. And so, things like that, it's like, if I could go back, that would relieve a lot of stress for me to have known that up front. But then would we have made the decision to even go through with it? Like, maybe not.
Right.
So, there's things that I would do differently, sure, but where would we end up? I don't know. Like, maybe we'll be better than what we are now, but maybe other challenges that we can't foresee, or we don't know what we don't know,
Right.
arrive. And that's where that could really, perhaps we'd end up in a worse position, or the studio wouldn't have made it. So.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting too, because it's almost like you want to have, as a business leader, you want to have all the information, right, about the costs, the risks. But sometimes when you don't have those, and you go ahead anyway, you make a better decision, right? You sort of take those self-imposed limits off. And it sounds like in this case, it might have been a blessing in disguise that you didn't know all the things that were entailed when you did that.
And that's actually kind of my mode of operation anyway. Like, I have a really hard time learning stuff up front where I have no context. So the only way that I learn is I do it. I find out what I don't know, and then I learn the stuff I don't know. And that's the only way I can operate. And so I don't know that it would work for me to even go, like, if I went back in time and talked to myself, like, I would have just not listened to myself, because I would have been like, I need to try this to, like, understand what you're even saying.
Right.
So yeah, that's a tough one for me. I know there are some people that are analytical and they can, like, learn stuff in advance and then follow the instructions. I just can't do it. Like, if I get an IKEA furniture to build, like, I just have to try to build it myself, and then when I, like, figure out why I did something wrong, I just have to usually unbuild it and then look at the instructions and rebuild it.
Yeah.
So it's just my mode of operation.
Yeah, you commit to what you're doing, and then you sort of figure it out as you're going. That's and that works too. I mean, sometimes having too much information is a bad thing as well. So it's a good balance, and obviously it's worked out. You've got a really great studio operation here, so you're just top of the line in terms of the quality, in terms of just the different things that you can offer for creators that want to come in and use the space. And I've seen it used in very professional sort of business settings, as well as very creative and sort of open types of productions, where it just really suits a lot of different ideas for what you can do with entertainment and video media. So, and that probably goes back to your experience, but of all the things that you've got, when specifically with the studio, more so than your digital business, everything that's here, is there anything that stands out that you're most proud of today?
Well, right now, I mean, I'm really proud of the fact that, so the dream from the start was to have a one button press studio. And so now, with the help of AI, we've achieved that. So this podcast, I don't know if you'll do some additional editing to it, but typically you can just push the start button, and the AI knows who's speaking. It'll cut to the right camera angles. Yeah. And it looks very human. Like, if you compare it side to side, you might be able to tell, but it's pretty hard to tell.
It's probably going to be a better editor than I would, right? I just leave it, let it do its thing. But yeah, literally, you're right. You come in here, and we should say that you don't have to have a crew in this operation. You one button, press it, it's set up to go, and it's a very easy experience.
Yeah, and it frees up your time, frees up costs, because you don't have to pay us to sit in here and operate. We do have, every studio has a DIY option, and we've made it where it's a couple buttons, like, you can press to make it work. But in a podcast situation, like, you don't want to be talking and operating it, so, like, usually you'd still have to bring somebody with you.
Right.
And so now this is a case where it's like, you can just push a button, let it go, and it's ready to upload when you're done. And then if you do have that extra time, you can always, like, add all the bells and whistles you want, and cut it down into reels and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's great. It's great, and I think it suits this format so well. But even your other studios and the rooms in this place have their own purpose and function, and they're sometimes multi-purpose. I've seen
Hmm.
where you can sort of flip the room around and have a different look.
Hmm.
If we had someone that was on Zoom or wanted to Skype or bring somebody in, you've got that capability as
Yeah.
well. And so it's just so versatile. I think it's really unlike any space that we have, not just here in the Pittsburgh area, but having traveled around to other places and been on other people's studios and stages, it is something that is unique. And I think if you're looking at what's next
Mhm.
and wanting to build others, you certainly have a gap and a need in the marketplace for a specialized type of studio space like this. So is
Well,
that yeah.
thank you. Yeah, yeah. No, that was our intention, and that's something that's cool. Like you know, who knows what would happen if Joe and I opened up like a storage unit, but I just don't think I would be excited to like run that every day. And this space is like a playground for us. Like we can just go in and try ideas. Like I said, like I learn best by I just try it and
Yeah.
I observe and I like learn, and then I just iterate. And that's kind of what we did here. And these spaces are specialized, but like you said, we can kind of like customize it to different looks. And we have a green screen that comes up here, so if you don't like the bookshelf, you can always like
Yeah.
replace it with something else. We can change the lighting in here. We could do, a 4-person setup here. So yeah, I mean, we just try to make it versatile so that it just makes sense for people to come here versus like trying to set it up in their home and figure out how to hook all the cameras together and then do all the editing. And
Yeah.
so yeah, we're just, again, I like efficiency, so I'm all about just
It-
like how do I make it more efficient.
Very efficient for sure. So next steps is you talked about potentially looking at other locations, other geographics, and trying to build the next Studio Me.
Mhm.
Is that what's next, or what is your plan?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, our whole concept here was like let's try to figure out like a really good model here in this space, and then sort of take that in other spaces, and hopefully this AI thing will be the next leap for us to be able to kind of take things, and we could operate a room like this. We could open one of these spaces and just let it sort of sit there, and people can book it, almost like renting an Airbnb.
Mhm.
Come into the space and not have to have anybody actually physically there. Like anything we would help with would be remote, or even just build this out in like corporate company. A lot of times corporations like they want to do podcasting and they want a podcast space, but they're like, we don't have anybody that has time to run it, and like we don't want to have to rely on a third party to like schedule time with them to come in. And it's like if I have an idea, I want to just sit down and talk. So like this would hopefully allow them access to do that. So that's kind of our next step. I mean, this is still very, very new. And Joe and I have a lot going on in our personal lives. I have 3 kids and I have my other production company, so we're not in like a huge rush to get this going. Um, and we like business always seems to kind of operate where you're like sort of falling up an escalator, in a way.
Right. Yes. Yes.
But then you hit sort of like this plateau, and it's nice to just sort of like stay at that plateau for a minute, just to like get your bearings.
Yeah.
You
Catch
don't
your
want to stay
breath.
there too long, but like
Right.
you know, just enjoy it until the next cycle of pain going up the escalator. But so that's
Right.
kind of where we're at now. We're sort of like at that nice peak, and we're just letting this ride for a second, figuring out like how people are going to use this, who's using it, and then kind of take it from there.
It's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a great story to see, and just watching your journey has been inspiring for sure. I think, like I said, you've built something that's unlike any other space that I've seen, and it's a lot to be proud of. And I think it's a really great testament to your vision for it, even if that vision sort of evolved as it
Mhm.
grew. I don't know if there's anything else that you want to share about this that we as we've gone through this that you were like, I got to come back to that. But I think it's great.
No, it's just really cool. It's a really cool feeling. Like despite all the hardships, like the thing that's cool is this was once just a red pen drawing on a napkin, and now like it's an actual thing people use and get value from, and that's what I'm definitely the most proud of. That we were able to just take something like from your mind and make it into reality, which is the same reason why I like filmmaking. It's like you start with nothing, you write a script, it's just words on paper, and then that somehow becomes a thing that people watch and enjoy and get some kind of emotional reaction from and value from it. So like business and filmmaking, I feel like, are the same. And in that sense,
there's a lot of similarities. It's true. Yeah, it's a great story.
Yeah, as you know, because you had a production company.
I did. Yeah, I did, and certainly, didn't grow it as you did with yours. But I think you have a purpose and a drive and a passion behind it that I think is really what sets apart everything you've done, including the studio. So one of the things that we do at Reignite is we're a 10X business coach. So we try to provide value and learning for entrepreneurs and business owners. If you had someone sitting here that had they were trying to think about whether it's a creative business or starting a studio or that next thing, what advice would you give a entrepreneur who's thinking about taking that next step?
Yeah. Oh man, so I think the thing that you have to kind of realize is everything happens on a much longer time horizon. Like, we're so used to just like instant gratification, or like you get hungry, you eat, and then that's solved. It's like, but that's not how business or a lot of things in life work. It's like a lot of the stuff you do takes a long time to actually see any results from. And so I'll give you some advice that like a mentor of mine in high school gave me, which is like, just keep your head down and keep grinding. And I think kind of what I took from that is like, if you are looking up every day and like, okay, where are my results? Like, you're going to be miserable, because like I did that for a while, and it's like, but if you look back, like if I look back a year or 2 years ago, like, wow, a lot's changed and a lot's better. But you don't see that day to day. Like most of the time, day to day, you just focus on the problems, and you just got to ignore all that. Ignore like, I'm going to work and it's going to give me this result. Like just work and just like work towards something that you care about. And eventually that'll lead to results, and you just have to trust that process.
Yeah, and you stay committed to that process, it sounds like. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. And you have. It's a testament to what you've built.
Thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely. Great. It's been a great conversation. I really appreciate you sharing all this with us. And I think, this is something that hopefully we'll get to revisit and see where you are next. But we're going to have a lot of opportunity to talk to business leaders in this studio. So thanks, Keith. Really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
And then maybe in a couple of years, I'll be interviewing you about the success of your 10X business. So,
thank you very much. I appreciate that. And yeah, absolutely. Be glad to.
Cool. All right. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
My crew is all fired up. Y'all better just wise up. Everybody getting sized up. Before we all rise up, start running your times up. Cause when my crew ride up, the sky gonna light up. Everybody get fired up.